Today is the seventh day of Chanukah. We're learning about the deeper meaning of Chanukah. So much more than just presents and donuts. Chanukah is a profoundly challenging spiritual experience. It really is. It's a profoundly challenging spiritual experience. When we get down to the weeds and understand the soul, the root, the essence of what this holiday is all about, we realize that we haven't actually won this war at all. It's still pending. What happened was, what we've learned so far is that, good morning, Dan, is that the Greeks were a highly sophisticated enemy of the Jewish people. Unlike the brute barbarians that we faced in the majority of the wars of Israel, who were trying to simply annihilate the Jewish people, God forbid, the Greeks were not looking to annihilate, they were looking to assimilate. This was not a war against not a war against Jews, it was a war against Judaism. Their problem was with the God of Israel, and that's why we learned that they allowed the Jews to live, they allowed the Jews to practice as Jews, but what they wanted them to separate, to renege on, is on their commitment to God. How do you practice Judaism without a relationship with God?
You do customs and you go traditions.
You turn Judaism into a feel-good cultural thing, right? Where you say that I help old ladies cross the street, I'm a good Jew in my heart, I'm repairing the world, I care for the downtrodden. You turn Judaism into some sort of an ethical culture, which has no soul. It's all about tikkun olam, which is about fixing the world, making the world a better place, right? You give charity a little bit, you help old ladies cross the street, right? You march with Martin Luther King, Black Lives Matter, and that's it. And now you're a good person, right? So there's really no, you've reduced Judaism to nothing.
It's like the Beatles said, put a little love in your heart.
Yeah, imagine all the people. That's it, right? You're done.
The garnish for the meal.
Mistaking the garnish for the meal, right? The garnish, turning Judaism into garnished. Now, sadly, we know, if you think about it, there are countless Jews today, let's talk about countless Jewish organizations that are trying to promote this exact idea. This precise ideal is what they're trying to promote, right? And I'm not going to get into who they are because you can figure that out on your own. And we're about to learn also that this is not an all or nothing scale. It's actually a sliding scale of either fear of God or discomfort with God or embarrassment with God. There's different degrees to which one person might say, I believe in God, but I'm not willing to talk about it publicly. Another person would say, I believe in God as creator of the world, but I don't believe in God as the writer of the Torah. Right. There's different levels of how this would manifest. The believing Jew, the Maccabee Jew is the one that comes out with the word Maccabee, Mi kamocha ba'elim Hashem, who is like you, Almighty, oh God. There's no one as powerful as God. The Maccabee Jew is the one that comes out and declares that there is no force in the universe other than God. Now, that's a very powerful position to come from. He comes out and he says, I'm not governed by the World Monetary Fund. I'm not governed by the World Health Organization. Not even the United Nations has any power over me. UNRWA means nothing to me, right? The Federal Reserve, none of that scares me. Because the only entity that has any power over me is God Almighty, is Hashem, and therefore, I live without fear. Not only do I live without fear, but I wear God on my sleeve. Because why would I not want to pledge allegiance to God? It's kind of like the American who's so proud of being an American that he puts a huge flagpole of the American flag in his property. Is he a fanatic? Is he a fanatic American? No, he's just a proud American, right? Would you call someone that that has that huge flag on his on his car? Let's say he puts a flag on his bumper sticker. Would that be a fanatical American? But then you'll say somebody who davens every day 3 times a day. You say, oh, he's a fanatical Jew. Why a fanatical Jew? That's just a Jew, right? This is the war that the Greeks were waging against the Jews. Have we won this war? I don't know. I mean, we're still here, so we're still learning Torah, so that's a good sign. So some of us have won this, are winning the war. But I think that we're in the same position as we were back then, where it was a minority fighting against the majority of Jews that were assimilated. So too today, we are the minority of Jews that are loyal, fighting against the majority of Jews that were lost to their people. They were so lost that they didn't even know that they were lost. That's the Jews that you're dealing with today. You approach a Jew today and you tell him that you're a Greek. You won't even know what you're talking about. He won't even understand, because they've been raised in countless generations of this, of this assimilation danger. And that's what's so powerful about the awakening that we are experiencing as a community here, where we are rising to consciousness as we realize, wow, I guess I've been doing it wrong, right? And it's actually okay for me to take on more mitzvahs and a bolder commitment to my faith. Right? That's what's happening in this community, and that's what's so exciting about what's going on over here. So let's take a look at this idea in the words of the original text of the Frierdiker Rebbe on page 338. 338, we're going to learn the manifestation of this idea. Oh, it's on the bookshelf over there. We're going to learn the manifestation of this idea, how it manifests in another angle of what the Greeks wanted from the Jews. We're going to learn about the 3 different kinds of mitzvahs. We know there are 613 mitzvahs in the Torah, but they divide into 3 different categories. There are the rational mitzvahs, the mitzvahs that make sense. They're called mishpatim. Then there are the mitzvahs that don't make sense, but they have historical value. Those are called eidos. Eidos means testimony. For example, eating matzah has no logical sense. People look at me and they're like, why would I want to eat matzah? It doesn't taste good. And I said to them, it's going to do with what it tastes. It will taste like the cardboard box. I said, so what? Like so what? I don't like maror. Okay. Well, question is, what does it tell you?
Yeah,
right?
What do I do with that information?
Like, what am I supposed to do with that information? It's like, it's an eidos. It's a historical. Oh, very good. He doesn't like the taste of medicine, but he tastes it because it's not about the taste, right? There's a deeper reason than just pleasure. Exactly, healing. And then there's a third kind of mitzvah, which is neither rational nor historical. And this one makes absolutely no sense at all. It's called a chok. A chok means a decree. We do it. Why? Because that's what God said. It doesn't even have historical value. Now, when you do the chokim, it's what's exciting about the chokim is that you know that you're pledging allegiance to God by doing them. By the mere doing them, you're pledging allegiance to God. You're testifying that I believe in God. Why else would you be doing it? Now, you can imagine which ones did the Greeks have a problem with. The chokim, of course. They had a problem with the chokim. The other 2, they were very, very fine with. They were like, oh, this is very historical. We like your archaeological, your long memories. You just remember things that happened years ago. That's fantastic. It's beautiful. Yeah, you want to do right. So you want to do the various mitzvahs that remind you of old things. That's great. Mitzvahs that make sense. Perfect. The Greeks said, perfect. Give us reasons. We love your reasons. But the minute that you start telling us that you do stuff because they make no sense, because the invisible God that you believe in, that we don't believe in, it told you to do them that they didn't want us to do. Let's take a look at that idea in page 338. The verse states, these are the eidos, chukim, and mishpatim. That's what it says in the actual Torah. All positive commands, those mitzvahs which we are obligated to do, as well as negative commandments, the matters which we must refrain from doing, are divided into 3 general categories of eidos, which means testimonies, chukim, which is decrees, and mishpatim, which means laws. Eidos are those commandments which serve as a testimony or a remembrance of significant events, such as Shabbos. What does Shabbos remind us of?
Days of creation.
When you observe Shabbos, when you rest on the 7th day, you are remembering that the cycle of 7 began on the 7 days of creation. That's what you're testifying to. And that God rested after 6 days of work. It was on the 7th day that he rested. Resting on the weekend is a religious experience. Okay? Profound, right? Pesach, what does Pesach remind us of? Of course, the exodus from Egyptian bondage. Sukkot reminds us, what? Why would you want to move out in the rainy season, out of your house, into a flimsy hut, right? Why would you want to do it? So what does it remind us of, Andy?
Of a time that we are in the desert, the 40 years in the desert.
Our vulnerability to God Almighty when He protected us from the elements.
So would that be, that's more of a mishpat, more of a logical thing.
No, it's testimonial.
Testimonial is just reminds you of the 40 years in the desert.
No, the fact that God protected us in the desert.
Isn't that what people then? Because they don't want you to believe in God. So
What?
what's protecting you?
It's a testimonial mitzvah. I'm sure that the Greeks would have had a problem with Shabbos, which is why they banned it. Because Shabbos is a testimonial to something which was persona non grata for the Greeks. They would not allow the belief in God. So they were like, you can't have a testimonial to belief in God or to godly protection on the sukkah. Warren, what was your question? Passive commandments. For example, do not murder. Things you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to murder. Things you're not supposed to do. There's active and there's passive, right? And then finally, we said, like, now, chukim. Chukim are those commands which have no rational explanation. In commenting on the verse, the law of the red heifer is the chukah of the Torah. Anybody have a red heifer? You have a heifer? You know what a heifer is?
When I lived in New Jersey, I had a heifer.
You had one in Kentucky.
A heifer is a cow. Why is a heifer called a cow? Why can't they just say cow? A heifer. Okay, a heifer is a cow. Fine. So there's the law of the red cow. Now, I'm not very good as my cows, but from what I understand, cows are mostly black and white. But there are some exceptions that are red. I don't know how they become red, but there's some exceptions of red cows. And these red cows are very, very critical in the laws of purity and impurity. When you have a red cow and you're able to raise them under very specific conditions and circumstances, then that red cow is able to, its ashes are able to purify the impure people who came in touch with the dead person. What?
A heifer is a young female cow that has not yet born a calf.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's a young female cow.
That has not yet born a calf.
Interesting. Very nice. Well, thank you, Rabbi. You told me something. Rashi notes the following, because Satan and the nations ask the Jews. Satan and the nations ask the Jews, what kind of mitzvah is the red heifer? And what rationale is there for it? The Torah writes, Chukah. It is a divine decree ordained by God, and no one is permitted to question it. No questions, right? A chukah. Now, guys, this is transformational in our faith. What we're about to experience. We're about to experience a transformation of faith, because what the Greeks had a problem with was the chukim, right? But we're about to give him back a 1-2 punch. Kosher, no. Kosher is not necessarily in that category, because there are a lot of people that like to explain kosher as a rational mitzvah. They say that bottom feeders, what do they call them? The shellfish are very bad for you, and pigs cause trichinosis, right? And there are people that will explain to you that kosher is a health thing, right?
Every aspect, not the mixing of milk and meat.
Yeah, I don't know how they could explain meat and milk, but there are elements of kosher that people want to explain.
Elements of kosher.
What?
Because in the old days, they had bowls that had crevices, and the milk would sit in there and get old, and then they would contaminate the meat. So that's why.
So you should ban milk entirely.
Well, since most Jews are lactose intolerant, that would be a great idea.
Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself, fellas.
So bad as we think the Hellenization of Jews was then, it doesn't come close to the secularization of Jews now, where it's chukim, mishpatim, eidusim, all of them are bad.
That's very interesting. That's a very interesting. See, the Greeks were at least encouraging Jews to act Jewish.
Well, it was a deeper culture than
At least faithless Judaism, but Judaism nonetheless. You're saying today, okay, yeah, but look, because today we've gone so far away that we've forgotten the plot. See, as long as God is present in your life, then you have the source, and you're able to always remember the source. But the minute that you cut God out of the picture,
Secularization is a post-biblical environment.
I want to give a quick. I was trying to give a quick example. I want to give a quick example. So there's people learn Kabbalah today.
Yeah.
So we teach Kabbalah. Chabad is Kabbalah. That's what it is. Chabad is Jewish mysticism, right? But there's organizations out there that teach Kabbalah as a business.
That's a business.
As a business, called the Kabbalah Center. They're very, very, very good fundraisers.
Rabbi.
And what they do is that they realize that catering to Jews is just too small of a pool. So they figure they got to find a way to make this marketable to Gentiles as well. So what they did is that they ripped God out of the picture, right? And that way Ashton Kutcher and what's her name, Demi Moore, are able to become priests of the Kabbalah Center, like what's his name, Tom Cruise is the priest of Scientology, right? Where they could become leaders, without, because it's very, very good for business. It's very, very good for business. I mean, because once you rip out, you just leave the remnants. You say like you take elements of Kabbalah and you leave out the holiness part of it. What does holiness mean? Holiness means what you're not allowed to do. Holiness, kadosh, means no access zone. Separation, things that are not allowed to mix. But you take that holiness aspect out. What are you left with? Just cool random stuff that apparently is very good for fundraising, right? So it's just interesting where, now there are people in the Kabbalah Center that are, I'm sure, committed to, to Torah values, I'm sure. But elements of that organization went so far off the train tracks that they're having, Kabbalah weddings and, just things that are so far removed.
Well, there's a lot in Kabbalah that makes sense, even if you
Right, universal truths.
right. I mean,
there is,
there's universal truths, ideas that are, positive, constructive on how to live a better life and so forth. And so maybe, people feel you could.
So let me ask this question. Somebody had a conversation with me, Andy, this week about a rabbi whose entire Judaism is about logic and things that don't make sense, parts of Judaism that don't make sense to him.
Don't make sense to him.
To
That's
him.
the problem. That's the problem.
They're like they're dismissed
rest
from the
of us-
pulpit as unacceptable or laughable.
We stand on the shoulders of giants, the rabbis that came before us. If you think that you can just dismiss the rabbis before us, call a midrash silly, then you're a fool.
You're an arrogant fool.
Well,
Right.
Under their philosophy, you should use this,
Why?
because I don't understand how this little thing here is able to connect me to somebody in Europe.
So at the end of the day, Rob,
I mean,
at the end of the day, he's talking about his cell phone. He says if you're going to take an approach to faith, which is purely logic based, then you shouldn't use cell phones because you don't understand how cell phones work. You shouldn't eat breakfast either because you don't understand how your digestive system works. The answer is that it's not really based on logic; it's based on ego. The essence is hubris, ego. The essence is hubris, which is I am going to do what works for me. And I like doing things that make sense. I don't like doing things that don't make sense to me. I don't like stepping outside of my comfort zone. When it comes to cell phones, I'm perfectly comfortable using a cell phone because it makes my life easier. And when it comes to eating food, I eat food because it makes me nourished. But when it comes to faith and making me step outside my comfort zone, logic is not the real factor. Ego is the real factor. And to be a Maccabee means to be able to have the humility to say, I pledge allegiance to a higher power that is greater than myself, that I do not understand. And that's why I do the chukim. That's why I'll do the chukim with love. Doesn't matter to me that it doesn't make sense. Rabbi, what's that tefillin going to do for me? And I look at him and I say, what's that going to do with it? A guy, during the war now, people are laying tefillin like never before. A guy comes, he says, I laid tefillin, but it didn't make me feel any better.
Sorry.
I'm like, and a soldier goes out to battle and he fires a missile, right? So maybe it makes him feel better, maybe it makes him feel worse. I don't know. But at the end of the day, we're part of the army, we're fighting, right? I don't know. Feelings don't really matter when it comes to the army, right? But if it's born out of ego, then feelings are everything. So if it's going to make you feel better to donate an ambulance or to donate to donate lollipops to, to orphan children in India, maybe that's going to make you feel better. So go ahead. But you're not helping the war effort, right? the end of the day, feelings have nothing to do with this. And we do the tefillin because we know that God tells us in the Torah that tefillin brings safety and security and deterrence to the people of Israel from our enemies. Let's keep on going a little further. Even King Solomon, the wisest of men, could not fathom the reasoning behind the command of the red heifer. Now, he was the wisest of men. He was trying to understand, to plumb the depths. As it is written, I said, I will gain wisdom, but it is far from me. That's in Ecclesiastes. King Solomon hoped to understand the command of the red heifer, but he found that it transcended even his own intellect. There was four other things that he couldn't understand. The four species of the lulav and the esrog. The lulav, the esrog, the myrtle, and the willow. He struggled to understand elements of it. Okay? So Winston tells me here from Indonesia that milk makes you sleepy and meat gives you energy. Really? Milk maybe makes you sleepy, but I think meat makes you... But even so, Winston, even so. So let's say that's true. Let's assume that what you're saying is true. I disagree, right?
It gives you iron.
Fine, it gives you iron. Okay, fine. Let's say Indonesia, maybe they have different ways of looking at nutrition. That's fine. Also in America, we put a lot of junk into our cows, right? But even so, Winston, even if it made sense that was the reason, would that mean that if it doesn't make you sleepy, or you're having a different kind of milk that doesn't make you sleepy, then maybe you should have milk and meat? But it doesn't work like that. We follow the rule of the king because that's what the king said, whether or not it makes sense. Now, the offering of the red heifer differed from all the other sacrifices. The red heifer is burned together with wood from a cedar, one of the largest trees, as well as with wood from an azov, which is one of the smallest trees. And azov translates as myrtle. Myrtle, thank you. No, hyssop. Hyssop. Now, have you ever seen a hyssop? Yeah, hyssop. Right. So it comes with a tall tree and a small tree, a hyssop, as well as as well as a dyed piece of red wool. The ashes of this mixture, when combined with water, purified the ritually impure. Yet this person who prepared the mixture became impure. So the person who was impure becomes pure when sprinkled the red heifer ashes in it. The person who was sprinkling, the pure person who was doing the sprinkling, he becomes impure. How does this make sense? This then is the meaning of chukim. They are divinely ordained decrees that defy human logic. And now we come to the easy ones. Mishpatim 339 are those commands that should be dictated even by human intellect. Even if we didn't have a Torah, even if God didn't give us any instructions, we still would have come up with these rules ourselves. Examples are honoring one's parents, giving charity, the prohibition against stealing and the like. This stuff is, the basics of a functional society. Yeah, but even without the 10 Commandments, even if not for the 10 Commandments, you can figure this one out yourself. The Torah says that if not that God gave us the Torah, we would have learned cleanliness from a cat, and we would have learned organization from an ant. We would have learned from other animals. Logically, it is easier to perform eidos and mishpatim, testimonials, mitzvahs, and logical mitzvahs, the reasons for which are more or less known, than it is to perform chukim. Nonetheless, man's honest logic dictates that chukim be performed with a degree of pleasure similar to that of eidos and mishpatim. Are you able to fulfill a mitzvah that makes zero sense to you with the same passion as you fulfill a mitzvah that does make sense to you?
No. It's a struggle.
This is the challenge of Chanukah. This is it. This is the challenge of Chanukah. The challenge of Chanukah is to make God a reality in your life. So real that just as important as it is to honor my parents, it is important for me to honor my God.
Actually, the further challenge is that even mishpatim should be done not because they make sense.
Oh, Tazai. That's the next point. Now we're gonna give a 1-2 punch back to the Greeks. So the Greeks said to us, to the Jews, you can do the mishpatim, the logical mitzvahs, even some of the edut, the testimonials you can do. But when it comes to the chukim, forget about it. This is illegal. Comes the Torah Chassidus and tells us, not only do we need to stay strong and do the chukim, the decrees, but even the mitzvahs that we do understand. Even those mitzvahs you should do, not because you understand them. You should do them because that's what God decreed. Is lemay nafkamina. Aramaic, lemay nafkamina means, what difference does it make if I'm doing it because it's logical or if I'm doing it because it's a decree? The difference is when I'm going to reach a situation where it becomes illogical. For example, imagine your mother is a narcissist. Can you imagine such a story?
Not in my wildest dreams.
Okay, imagine. It happens once in a while. Imagine your mother's a narcissist and she's a mean person. And she sucks the energy out of the room and she makes you feel miserable every encounter. She used to beat you as a child, but now she beats you emotionally. And you can't get out of it, even though you're 75 years old or 65 years old. And you still feel like garbage after you encounter her. Logic would dictate
No contact.
no contact. Comes Chassidus and says, God has commanded you to honor your mother. Whether you like it or not, you're going to honor her. Why do you do it? Not because it makes sense, not because it makes you feel good. You do it because that's the right thing to do.
It's God commanded.
And it says honor. It doesn't say love, doesn't say like.
That's exactly right.
It says you can love your God. You can love other things, but it never says love your parents.
And this is the challenge. Truth, however, Eidos and Mishpatim should be performed with the same acceptance of the divine yoke as is required by Chukim. Isn't that amazing? What a challenge we're experiencing today. For the main reason the mitzvahs are performed is because God so commanded and not because of their logical imperative. Wow. To be a Maccabee is to be able to declare Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, not only with your head, but also with your heart. To be able to live with the conviction that there is only one God. To be able to live with the world view of the gate of trust. To be able to know that I am guided by the most powerful power in existence, and that is God Almighty. To know that I encounter no fear, no anxiety, and that I wear my sure, and that I wear my commitment on my sleeve. I'm not embarrassed of my faith. I'm proud of my faith. I'm strong. This manifests in how we observe the mitzvahs. And today I'm challenging you, friends, to take on every mitzvah that you do, to reassess every mitzvah that you do, to ask yourself, is this a logical mitzvah? Is it a testimonial mitzvah? Or is it a decree mitzvah? Is it a eidos? Is it a mishpat, eidos, or chok? And when you ask yourself that question, I want you to ask yourself a second question. Am I doing it because it makes sense? Or am I doing it because this is what God commanded me to do?
Why should you differentiate? What difference does it make?
The answer is you shouldn't.
Whether it's this, or this, you have to do them all.
So why differentiate at all? Why does the Torah differentiate is the question?
No. I know. The Torah can differentiate, but why do I need to differentiate?
You should just do them all for the right reason.
Right, just do that. Doesn't matter. Right reason.
Wait, he's already there. I like it. This is good. So no, the reason why the Torah gives us 3 different mitzvahs is because sort of mitzvahs we were given the gift of understanding as well. The understanding is not the reason why we do it. The understanding is a gift. It's a gift. Yeah, it's a cherry on the sundae, exactly. So we do it regardless.
That's what study comes in, why we study,
Exactly.
to understand.
That's right, as much as we can.
As much as we can.
But what happens if you don't understand something?
Do it anyway.
You'll do it anyways. Exactly. There you go. Because that's commitment. Now you could live your life.
Doing study,
You could live
you're
your
supposed to do it.
you could live your life. I'm sorry, what?
Even if by studying, you know you're supposed to do these things if you don't understand it. But if you didn't study, you wouldn't know that you should do it. It all comes down to knowing, not in detail.
I'm sorry, I missed that point. Can you say it again?
Like command.
If you didn't know it, or studying shows you, teaches you to know it,
What to do?
To know,
what to do.
even if you don't
Even
know.
if you don't
Look,
understand
you
it.
could live a relationship with your spouse where you say, look, I don't understand anything about you, but whatever you tell me, I'm just going to do. That's one way of living a life. You could have a relationship like that with your spouse, but it would be like soulless, you know? But when you are able to engage in a respectful dance with your spouse and say, look, you know, I'd like to encounter and discuss this with you. You know, at the end of the day, you know that I love you and I'll do it anyways. But when you can understand it, it makes a much more of a meaningful connection. And that way, what happens is that you're serving God not only with your hands and your feet, but even with your mind and your heart.
When it comes to your wife, how in the world are you supposed to understand.
For that, we're gonna have the uncensored session, folks. We're gonna end it up. Have a happy Hanukkah, everybody.